Welcome back, Breakaway Wealth. I'm your host, Jim Oliver, and with me today is Seth Andrews. Seth is a client and friend. He's in Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome, Seth.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. I woke the dog up behind me. He's like, what's going on, man? That's a loud voice.
That's Oliver.
Oliver.
He's always.
I like him
there.
already.
Yeah.
He and I are natural friends. Yeah. Oliver. He's yawning. Yeah, he's got a lot of stuff going on today.
I got him taking care of food. He's gone outside. He has some water, so he's good.
He's very cute. He looks like he's watching the show almost. So, Seth, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, and then we're going to talk about your background because I think it's really interesting and fascinating, and I have a lot of respect for it. We have some things in common. So, tell everybody about what you're doing right now.
Sure. I work for Amazon Web Services, big tech. Have spent my career in professional services roles, doing consulting work at large consultancies as well as boutique consulting firms. I provide supply chain expertise to customers in healthcare and life sciences. So it's a fun role. Being at AWS is even more fun and exciting because at Amazon and at AWS, we're actually we're on the bleeding edge of technology, and we're helping shape many different industries and do a lot of cool things. So it's exciting to be on the edge of that and on this transformation from this industrial age to more of an information age. Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, some of the stuff that you shared with me when we first met, we were discussing infinite banking. It was kind of went over my head pretty quick, but I still remember some of the stuff, and I thought, wow, that's pretty amazing that kind of stuff is coming down the road, and in the near future, it's going to be some huge things coming, and it's got to be exciting to be part of it. And Seth, I always say our futures are always bigger than our past. And I'm writing a book right now, and the first chapter is a little bit about my past and how I got to, kind of how I started in life. And we share one thing is that was a time in our lives where we were homeless. And so I described that in detail. And I remember, just talking to you a little bit about, hey, how'd you get into tech and where'd you go to school? And then we just kind of started to chat. So kind of start me from the beginning. And I remember that your mom was a pretty incredible, is a pretty incredible person. She's still with us, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that just kind of tell us about your beginning.
Oh yeah, definitely. I grew up in Georgia and lived a, pretty, kind of simple life, small town, and really at some, or sorry,
that's okay.
Yeah, just growing. Sorry, can I pause for a second?
Yeah, pause. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Don't be sorry. It's just, I know that sometimes, when I tell my story, Seth, there's times where I just think, wow, I'm kind of stumbling on it, but there's other times I just blurt it out, so don't worry about it. Just roll with it. I've got a great editor on our podcast team. He's going to make it sound perfect. Okay.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So grew up in Georgia and have three sisters, younger than me, one brother, and around the age of 13, we were in a pretty unfortunate situation where my dad had ended up leaving our family, and it was just my mom and brothers and sisters, and at that point, he actually emptied out our 401k savings, kind of took everything, and he was gone. And so you just didn't see him. And I remember coming back, home with my mom one day, and there was a lock on our door, and at that point, we realized, okay, we're, getting evicted, and my mom had nowhere to go. But, so we went to a homeless shelter, women's battered homeless shelter. Unfortunately, I grew up in an abusive relationship, with my father. And, but, we went to the shelter. We lived, there for a couple of years, actually. But, throughout that time, continued to go to school, get my education and so forth. But there were challenges with that, from being able to actually be in sports or go to the library and research, or getting access to the internet. So we had to be home at the shelter at a certain time, in order to stay within the rules. So everyone had to be back. So to stay there. But anyways, we lived there. We lived in a big suburban for a little while. That's cramped quarters with a few kids and a little crazy, but ended up losing our car at one point. We actually had some stuff in a storage unit, and someone stole all of our belongings in the storage unit. So we literally had nothing, no pictures, no memories, nothing except what we had, which were some clothes at the homeless shelter. But throughout that experience, one of the things that I talked to you about are the people that come into your life and help kind of make a difference. While I was at the shelter, there was a woman that worked there, and her husband and son, her son actually became one of my best friends. She took me over, met their family, and then I started working on a farm that my friend's father actually managed. And so I started to learn a lot of different skills there. And maybe it was labor skills. It could be changing tires, things that my dad didn't teach me, or mowing lawns and just random stuff. But it made me kind of better, or it built my work ethic, I would say, there. But I spent all my time there because I wanted to get away from the homeless shelter. It's not a fun place to be, and so forth. But through that, a couple of years later, my mom had worked with a few people to try and get a home through Habitat for Humanity. We ended up in 2004 getting a home, which is not actually just given to you. There is work that you put into that, and what's given to you is the labor that is put into building the home and the materials that cost. But you still have to make payments to that home, and continue to pay that. You could still lose the home if you don't make payments. There is like a mortgage to that. So, but we did get a Habitat for Humanity home. We actually were in the newspaper, a local newspaper. People at school never knew that I was homeless or knew my situation. I was fairly popular, but at that point they realized the news got out. I didn't even know we were in the paper, but the news got out, and I had people, kind of coming to me, asking me questions about this, and a little nervous, kind of, so forth. But another opportunity kind of came up. I wrestled in high school, and one of my good friends' moms came up to me to talk about the situation, and then she started. Another day, she came up and said, "Are you taking SAT?" And I said, don't really have any plans. I can't really get there. And then I can't really afford it, so forth. And she said, that's no excuse. You're going to spend the night with me. It was the last test that you could take before I guess year is over. So she took me in, gave me a sleeping bag. We stayed overnight, I stayed overnight, and then she took me and her son to take the SAT. And I took the SAT. I made the bare minimum on the SAT for a college that I wanted to go to. I applied to one college with like the minimum SAT score, hoping to get in. I applied on the last day, and somehow I didn't really think I was gonna go to college, and somehow I got into Georgia Southern University. And the reason I picked that school was because it was the most affordable one that I could think of to get the degree that I thought would be a good return on investment. And it was further away from kind of where I was. I wanted something just completely different. And so, went to Georgia Southern, and that was, where I started college, and things started to change, but I knew nothing about loans. I knew nothing about like how I was going to pay for college, actually, which that itself was scary. I did have grants and whatnot, and my first year, was good, but then I did need more money to survive and everything. I got a job. I was working Monday through Friday, 10-hour shifts, night shifts, and I think it was like 10 to 6 maybe, or 10 to 8. And then I worked 12-hour shifts on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, night shifts again. And I'd go to work. I'd go home after that, and I'm covered in just black dust from unloading these boxes out of a truck. And you only got paid by how many trucks you either unloaded or by how many boxes you put on the truck. So you only got paid by how hard you worked. And it was grueling. And then I would go to school, and I would go to like my statistics class that I was taking. And half of the class I would be like nodding off, like the professor noticed as well. And when I had an exam, like I could hardly keep my eyes open because that was like an hour or two after I finished work. And then I got a little bit of a break, and then I had the rest of my classes, and then I would go back to work again. It was just absolutely grueling. But a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, still a great friend, today, had told me about a professor that I should connect with in the information systems department. He said, he's talking about like this enterprise resource planning, ERP, solution, SAP, something that maybe you should look into and, talk to him. And I actually, took his advice, and I just randomly went to the professor's, door, knocked on his door. He was the dean of the department, and said, "Hey, a buddy of mine, told me to maybe chat with you about, this." And we chatted a little bit, but it was more about, what am I doing? What are my career aspirations? Like, I really didn't have much of a idea of what that was, but I did tell him kind of what I am doing today, and it's tough. And at that point, he gave me a choice. He said, look, I can give you, a job here. You can, be a tutor. And I think he gave me up to, 20 hours a week. So if you want to do that, you can do that. And then he told me about financial, or about student loans, and how, this is something that I should maybe consider. But I can also work and to minimize the amount that I need to take out and everything. But I basically I always look at debt and, loans as something that's scary. Just not knowing anything about it. Not really knowing, anything about college either. None of that. So, I took his advice. I talked to a financial aid counselor. I took out a loan. I started working for him, and it was a complete 180. I got to focus on school, my courses. I was the top computer science grad in my department when I graduated. I crushed my courses. I was also making, not as much money as I was making from the warehouse job that I worked in, but I was able to, not have to scrape up pennies to buy peanut butter and jelly to, live off of that. But that was, kind of the beginning of a shift in just my mindset. And I realized through a lot of this that working at in this warehouse, is something I never want to do again. Awful, tough work. And also, working on the farm, it's hard manual labor. But I got a good work ethic out of, all of these, but, then seeing that like I could do pretty well and how much more value I was getting from tutoring and being able to also learn and study and learn things while I'm tutoring and focus on my education. That was just, it changed a lot in my life. And then, from there, I started, figuring out like I found out like the most important thing, for me is to be around the people that I see that are successful and that I want to learn from, I guess. And it's tough to actually, get to that point where you can be a part of, I wouldn't say it's a circle, but be a part of like, the person that you admire, to be able to give something to them as much as you're getting in return. And it's different. And I found a few people that like I've done that with, and I continue to do that with. And it's, been a lot of fun, but a lot there, but it's,
No.
Kind of,
I think I really, there's a lot of things to respond to. One is adversity introduces a man to himself, right? That's the quote. Now you can update it for today's world and say adversity introduces a person to themselves. And it really does. But, when I was 13, I swung a hammer in a casket factory. So I tell my friends that I learned really early what I didn't want to do. Like I thought I couldn't do that the rest of my life. I could not mentally turn off my curiosity and my desire to learn and everything else and just swing that hammer for 8 hours a day. And then when I was in college, I worked at 24-hour Nautilus from 11 at night till 7 in the morning. So now I was just sitting behind the counter and I'll be honest, sleeping when I could, right? But it was still brutal because I didn't excel like you did in school. So I was about half asleep most of my college career. And, when you're homeless, you wonder, what are these other people that aren't homeless? What do they know? Or how come they're lucky and I'm not? Or, what do they know or about money? And so then you're always curious about money and kind of leveling up or just kind of breaking away from that mindset. Because you could the people that are in shelters, that are homeless, that are in the inner city or poor, they have a mentality and they just accept that mentality. I'm not criticizing them. You do the best you can do, but to not accept that is really the decision to say, no, I'm not going to just be slotted here for the rest of my life. I gotta do something else. And you said mindset, and that's exactly that mindset. But in every case in your story, in your life, you took action, and there was, I coached wrestling. I don't know if we talked about this before,
really?
but I coached wrestling for 15 years. And so one of the things about wrestling is wrestling teaches you about yourself really quick.
Yep.
Right. And it teaches you about hard work, because you got to be in better shape. You can't be in bad position. You got to know, you got to know what you're doing. And there's nobody to turn around and go, man, I hope that running back just takes off and runs for a touchdown. No. It's just you and the other guy. And some days you're going to be looking at the ceiling of the gym, and other days he's going to be looking at the ceiling of the gym. And for anybody that's never wrestled, you don't want to ever be looking at the ceiling of the gym. You're done, right? But so I love all of that in your background, and I love the success that you found and your curiosity that you're still having today and growing all of that. But what do you think? I just said what I thought about, like, what made you break away from your circumstances? What was the one thing that you remember? Or it doesn't have to be one thing. It could be how many ever there are.
Yeah. So I knew that if I was going to break away, I had to leave the environment that I was in. And I had to, that is, really focusing on yourself versus, everyone else. And that was kind of tough because, again, I was the oldest in my family, and with my dad not there, it was challenging on my sisters. It was challenging on my mom. So, people looked at me as like the father figure of the family, and still do. But if I remained in that situation, or like in that town, or that environment, I was never going to grow. And in order to grow, you have to build experiences. I'll say, like, when I went to college, that was in South Georgia. It was different people that I experienced. I moved from South Georgia to Chicago, and Chicago, it opened my mind to just a diverse set of people. And I knew nothing about the Midwest. I knew nothing about the Big Ten colleges out there. I hadn't heard of University of Michigan, but some of my best friends I made while I was in Chicago went to University of Michigan. And I remember my first flight. My first flight was to an interview for the job that I was hired for. So there were just so many things that I personally had to push myself to find those experiences, or take on those experiences and just change. Whereas I look at my sisters today, they still haven't left the city that they grew up in, and they're in challenging situations. And then but if I look at my brother has, and he pushed himself into the military, which gave him leadership skills and direction. And from there, he's gone to, he went to Kennesaw State University, graduated there. He has a 6-figure job now. He is now getting his MBA while working a full-time job, and he's doing he's in a research program, and paying for his school through the research program that he's a part of. And he's got side businesses that, he's doing side hustles as well. So, and I think for him, it was kind of the same thing. He had to move out of the city that he was in, and he actually went to the military. So that got him out of that environment and around people that can be role models for him. I'm a big believer in in role models, and in mentorship, and whether the person on the other side realizes that they're a mentor or role model. They may not. I've had plenty of role models that don't know that they're role models, unless I tell them or told them. And they could be older or younger, but when I'm around them and I look at them, I see traits that I try to absorb. I look at kind of what they do, and try to take that as something that I implement in my life. And but that's probably the big thing that is a differentiator between those that get out of those situations and those that don't. And like I said, I still see it to this day. And some of that's like the risk piece, taking on risk, not being afraid that of the risk of failing. And I know that that's something that's challenging for some in my family as well.
So when you don't have a lot to lose, you try things because there's not a lot to lose, and exactly. I always love that Robert Kiyosaki says A students end up working for C students because C students are used to failing and they just keep trying. The A student goes into the fetal position when they fail. What do you mean I failed? And then they're done. Well, I'm not going to do that again because they're used to succeeding. And sometimes leaving is leading. And I grew up in LA. If I wouldn't have left LA, I don't know what I would be today, but I left LA and went to Missouri that I had no idea anything about the Midwest, just like you. Now, I was in Missouri, you were in Chicago, different environments, but still it was totally out of my comfort zone and not in the big city and anything else. But, what you learn is that I know that you could be plopped down in any city, in any small town, anywhere, and you'd figure it out. And I always said that about, I feel like that if somebody says, hey, I'm going to move you to Rhode Island tomorrow or New Hampshire tomorrow, I'll figure it out. I'm not afraid of going to those places. Right. Or maybe it's across seas, it doesn't matter. But, that decision to lead and not stay and compromise everything, that's hard, but it also, leadership is hard, doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think if you don't have that strong father figure or mother figure, I know you had a strong mother figure, but, or even if your mom didn't really know what to do, so she wasn't a role model in that way, I think sometimes that gives us freedom, because I was the same way, to choose our role models and our mentors. And it's not like we feel like, okay, we got to watch and see what our dad did or our mom did, because we know that's not the path. If your dad's a doctor and you think, okay, well, I got to be a doctor. I kind of feel bad for those people that they feel like they're obligated to do that, because I got to choose my role models. I got to choose my mentors. I didn't have emotional attachments to them. And so if they failed me, I just found a different one, and so maybe it's our superpower, Seth, that we didn't have that. And I always try to turn everything that happens to you into a, positive. And this is the theme in the book that I'm writing, but your scars are how we recognize you, right? We know Seth Andrews because of the story you just told and the scars that story created. But your scars are your superpowers, because society puts chains on us to weigh us down, regardless of what it is. Hey, you're a C student, or you're poor, or you're rich. They're all chains. So when you break a chain, it leaves a scar. But then we recognize each other as scars. And the greatest example of that is Jesus and Doubting Thomas. Doubting Thomas says, unless I can put my finger in the hole where the nails were, I'm not going to believe it's Jesus. Now, in my belief system, I believe Jesus is God. So he could have healed those holes, okay? Yeah. But he didn't. He healed a lot of other people, but he didn't heal those holes, because that's how we recognize, that's how we knew it was him. So I love your story, because that's how we recognize who Seth Andrews is. So I know your future is bigger than your past, and you're going to do something really cool in the future. And I, want to just thank you for sharing that story. And I know it's not easy. Again, writing this book, I'm writing a book I don't want anybody to read, and I know, you know what I mean.
This is actually, I probably could count on one hand the number of people I've, actually told any of my story to. My wife, one of our really good friends, one of my, best friends that you talked about earlier, and maybe one or two others, but it's interesting. It's definitely something that's tough to talk about. But you're exactly right. Those scars make you who you are today. And it's also kind of building and will shape who my children become. I believe as well, both my boys, and as well as my hope and desire is that I'll be able to provide mentorship or be a role model in the way that I really needed growing up as well for others. That's my big pursuit in life. For my boys and for others that are that are driven and they have the ability, but they need some direction to get there. I think there's a lot of those out there. So
yeah, I mean again, I coached baseball, football, and wrestling is by far the best because the parents aren't really involved. I mean, you don't get to say, "Hey, Bobby's better than Johnny." Well, okay, hold on just a second. Come on over here, boys. Let's see if that's what mom thinks. Let's see if that's true. But when you see kids that have potential, but they just don't have the confidence. Confidence is a skill set. You get confidence by preparation. If you go to wrestling practice, but then you go to another practice on Friday nights that are all the best wrestlers in your area.
No.
And then and when wrestling practice is over, you run bleachers or something. You do more than everybody else. That gives you confidence that I'm better than they are, even if I'm not as talented, because I'm not going to get as tired as they are. I mean, I used to play football at like 219 and I'd wrestle 189. And, when at 189, I was stronger than most of the 189 guys because I had just dropped all this weight. Right. And when I didn't make weight, my coach would punish me. He'd make me wrestle heavyweight. So I would go.
Oh yeah. I've definitely had that. And I also, I spend all this time losing weight. Would wrestle 119 and they would, bump me up to 135. And I'm like, oh man, you're killing me here.
Yeah.
That was, another good outlet, for myself. Really good, but
yeah, sometimes you have to have an outlet for that anger too, that you feel when you're a kid for your circumstances. That's healthy and legal is the way that I put it. Football, you can knock the crap out of somebody. Wrestling, you can instill some punishment, and it's legal. And actually people will cheer for you to do it. So
I definitely had my share of I got out my anger for sure, especially in matches. I remember one in particular where I busted the guy's nose like 2 or 3 times, just kind of coming up the way that it's coming up. Yeah. His mom was just so livid. And then the whole thing didn't really end well, but it was
but we used to tell kids, be nice off the mat, don't be nice on the mat. And sometimes that outlet, having that, they were the nicest kids off the mat, but they were killers on the mat, man. So
yeah, exactly.
I remember a couple of kids that went on to do like UFC stuff that I thought, I always knew that kid was just a little bit crazy, but anyway, well, hey, I could talk to you all day about this, and maybe we'll have you come back on and talk some more. But my producers tell me I got to keep it within a certain time frame, and I have no idea how long we've been talking. So, but I'd like to ask you a question. I'm really curious this answer, And I ask all of the guests on the show, if God came down from heaven and allowed you to only retain the knowledge of one book that you've read, so you can only retain the knowledge from one book that you've read, what you learned in that book, what would it be? What would the book be?
Yeah, so I'm excited about this question. I don't know if you will have read this book or not, but first I want to say that you had on Hayden Crabtree recently.
Yep.
After I listened to the podcast, I got his first book, Skip the Flip, and phenomenal. Just great, learnings from that. And then I'm about 2/3 through the second one. Just a really good book. I'm probably going to listen to both of them again and take notes. And then Second Chance is something that you recommended recently on one of the podcasts as well. So something I'd recommend. But the one book that I thought helped me a lot was the Algebra of Happiness by Scott Galloway. He's a professor at NYU.
Yep.
And I found it interesting because it's something that I wish I would have read when I was younger. It really gives you insights into maybe more than just happiness, how people actually start their career and make money. What in his opinion is most important to achieve financial stability, happiness, all of that. And some of it is, some people wouldn't agree with. And, some of that is, working hard when you're young. Some people pull long hours when they start their careers so that they don't have to work as hard when they're older. And there's a balance in your relationships in your career. And that can be a little challenging, but you may have to focus more on your career earlier in life so that you can have a little bit more balance when you have a family, when you get older. Also moving to the right zip code is something that's important. You want to be surrounded by people that are also driven and have kind of the same mindset and mentality. And that I know helped me when I moved to Chicago. I was around the type of people that I wanted to be around and that I wanted to grow to be like. And I've always gravitated to people that are older than me because I think it's because of that, maybe mentorship. And I'm always kind of learning from those individuals that have already experienced certain things. He talks about, this is also debatable, don't follow your passion. The only people that talk about their passion are billionaires that have already kind of made it, and they say kind of follow your passion. Sometimes you have to figure out what it is that's going to maybe make you money, even though your passion is acting or drawing or whatever. That may not be the best pursuit for your time. And then he also says it's all about relationships. So and it's something that I haven't done a great enough job in my past and building my relationships or keeping my relationships in check. But relationships, I know, is probably the most important thing for your career and for happiness in your life, especially as you get to an older age. Making sure to be grateful for the things that people have done and so forth. So I really enjoy that book. And if you don't have time to read the book, he has a 30-minute lecture that really hits home. He puts his own little spin on it, and it's really good. So
we'll put the name, we'll put the book in the show notes. We'll also put the link to the 30-minute video. Something that you said there, I live in Florida, so I live with a lot of older people, right? And I'm a young guy down here at 56. So, but you learn a lot from these guys. And, I give them a hard time that they were previously important people and, call them pips and They all have a story of success to some level, and on some of them the very high level. And I love to hear their stories, of how they started and how they got, how they took off, and I learned from them, different things. And so I think that's smart. And somebody told me a long time ago, if your definition of happiness is to be a billionaire and to be married to a supermodel and to have abs at 56, then you know what, you might not be happy, right? Yeah. But if your definition of happiness is to wake up tomorrow, guess what? Probably got a pretty good chance, right? Yeah. And my best definition of happiness is making progress. If I'm making progress and I feel like I'm getting better, then I'm happy. If I feel like for whatever reason, something's in my head or I get injured or something where I'm not making progress, then I'm not very happy.
Yeah.
So, Seth, I totally love everything that you said. Love that you shared your story. Feel honored that you did that with on our show with not telling a lot of people your story. It's very courageous. And so thank you very, very much.